Hello, this is Gwen Hill from Pine Ridge Baptist Church, Ladies Sunday School class, and we're studying Genesis 49 today. We may not be able to get all the way through it, so I'm going to say this is part one. In 48, we find Jacob 147 years old at the end of his life. He has been talking to Joseph, to Manasseh, and to Ephraim, and he has blessed Joseph's two boys, and he has shared with Joseph and these two young men some truths and some scriptures, and it's been very endearing. And this old man sitting on the side of his bed holding on to his staff and blessing his son and grandsons. But now in 49, he's expanding, so he wants all of his boys to come in, and he's going to talk to each one individually about what the Lord has laid on his heart for them, concerning them. It is also, remember that these prophecies are not just for these 12 that are within this room, but it is for their whole family, for all of their descendants. This is going from then till now. Most of these prophecies have come true, but there's a few that don't come true until the millennium. So this is very far-reaching. It's not just for the 12 sons, it is for their families. So you've got to keep that in mind. It's for their descendants. Okay, and Jacob called to his sons, and he said, "Gather together, that I may tell you what shall befall you in the last days. Gather together and hear, you sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel, your father." Let's unpack it a little. Jacob called his boys to proclaim to them what was going to befall. And I want you to note, and if you're looking in your Bibles at this time, underline the phrase "in the last days" if you're using a New King James Version, which is what I'm using. This is the law of first mention. This is the very first time in the Bible that phrase is used. It's used frequently in the New Testament, but in the Old Testament, this is the very first time it's been used, and it will be used 14 times in total in the Old Testament. There is a lot of significance to when something is mentioned the very first time. Look at the surroundings, look at what's going down, look at the context, and it has a huge spiritual significance, the first use. And the first use helps you to govern what it means in the next time that you read it. Verse 2, gather together. Notice he himself calls himself by both his names. He said, "You sons of Jacob." Anytime they use the word Jacob, they're talking about the person, the father, the grandfather, the forefather, Jacob. When they when they say the word Israel, it could either refer to the nation or it could refer to Jacob, the patriarch. If they're talking about, if they use the word Israel after the split where you had 10 tribes in one section and 2 tribes in the other section, if they use the word Israel at that time, they're almost certainly talking about the 10 tribes, the 10 of them, okay? They're talking about the nation, not the person. This is, you can look in your Bibles and see if the text looks a little different. It may be inset, it may be in italics, and that means we're changing style here. Some of this is written in poetry, okay? In Genesis 49, 3 and 4, he's talking to Reuben. Who is Reuben? Reuben is Leah's son. He is Jacob's very firstborn son. He is the son of a legal wife. He is the expected receiver of the firstborn blessing. Let's go over that for just a little bit. Who gets the firstborn blessing? The firstborn male child from the legal wife. And he must be acknowledged as the firstborn by the father, and the father can elect not to give him the firstborn blessing if he has acted dishonorably, if he has done anything to show that he is unworthy of the title. Well, what does the title give them? In their culture back then, not just the Hebrews, but all around, they all subscribed to the law of the firstborn, or the blessing of the firstborn. And it had two parts. The first part was whatever the father had was divided. If he had 4 sons, they divided it into 5 portions. If they had 8 sons, they divided it into 9 portions. That's because the firstborn got 2 portions. All the other brothers got 1 portion. Why did he get 2 portions? He got 2 portions because he had to take care of, if his mother was still alive, had to take care of his mother. If he had any unmarried sisters, he had to take care of them. If there were unmarried children, children below the age of their majority, he had to take care of them. So that extra portion went to help provide for those folks who would be left destitute when Daddy died if he didn't. And the second thing was they became the leader of the family. They are the one with the majority. They're the ones with the wisdom. They're the ones that are set aside by Dad as the respectable, responsible man to be the leader of the family. Now, the firstborn rights stopped right there for the rest of the community, for the rest of their culture. The Hebrews went one step further because God gave them something else. God had shared with Abraham that from his seed would come the birth of the Messiah, the seed of the woman. Abraham's lineage, that's where the Messiah was coming from. And from him, it went to Isaac. From Isaac, then it went to Jacob. So now Jacob is telling who the firstborn is, and that firstborn will also, up until this point, that firstborn would be the grandfather in the lineage of Christ. We're going to see that changes right here in this chapter. This is an integral chapter in our Bible. One that, if you're going to look at the rest of the scripture, it's good to have a good handle on what happens in 48 and 49 of Genesis. So when he talked to Reuben, he said, "Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power." Now they're all gathered in this room. Do you kind of see the brothers smiling, maybe nodding their head? This is very positive that Jacob is saying to his son Reuben. He said, "You were conceived in the power and the vigor of my youth." You had all the advantages. Judah might have been smiling and happy with what he was hearing so far, but that's not going to last. Let's look at verse 4. "Reuben, you are as unstable as water. You shall not excel. Because you went up to your father's bed, you defiled it. He went up to my couch." You know, if you leave water alone, it'll flow to the lowest level. I don't know if that's what he meant here or not, but makes good sense to me. I heard a preacher preach it that way, and it struck me as a very good explanation. Another one was, I can remember my dad saying, "Well, we can't start building today because it's rained and there's too much water. You can't build on water soggy ground." That's very unstable, isn't it? And he's telling Reuben, you're not going to excel. And what he is really saying is what you did with Bella showed a lack of character, a lack of judgment. You are not worthy of being the firstborn. And he takes it from him. Why did Reuben go up and sleep with Bilhah anyway? Now remember who Bilhah was? Do you remember Bilhah? Bilhah was Rachel's handmaiden. She is Dan and Naphtali's mother. When Rachel died, then Reuben, at some point, became afraid that his dad was going to make Bilhah a legal wife, and that would make her more of a threat to his mom, Leah. And Leah had already fought for years with Rachel, and he didn't want that to continue. So he took it upon himself to do the one thing he knew would keep his daddy away from Bilhah, and that is he went to sleep with her. Bad judgment. The man had bad judgment. So he's not giving the firstborn blessing to him. And Reuben's tribe never grew to grow. It was a large tribe to begin with, but they lost a lot of membership and it just kind of dwindled away. There's not a whole lot of them that was left. You'll never read in the Bible of a tribe from Reuben being a judge or a king or a very great man, a good leader. It just didn't happen. So, sorry, Reuben. Genesis 49, 5 through 7, Simeon and Levi. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Instruments of cruelty are in their dwelling place. Let not my soul enter their council. Let not my honor be united to their assembly. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they hamstrung an ox. They're all brothers. Why did he say Simeon and Levi are brothers? Why did he say it in that way? Simeon was the second born. Levi was the third. They were children of Leah. And Simeon and Levi were violent men. And they fed off of each other. And they encouraged one another. And how mean can we get? They enjoyed their cruelty. And Jacob said, I don't even want to know everything they think of and they get into in their times of counsel. I don't want to be there, and I don't want them to be representing me either. I don't want them to speak for me or to represent me. They are not worthy, either one of them, of taking up the mantle as being the firstborn. Remember what happened in Shechem. He said they killed a man. They did more than kill a man. They killed a whole village of men. That's kind of a terrible story, but you can slip back into Genesis and read that. They butchered a whole town. And Simeon seems to have been the stronger of the two, the more evil of the two. And that is drawn because when Joseph put Simeon in jail and kept him in jail while the rest of the brothers went home to talk Daddy into letting Benjamin come, and the speculation is some people just belong in jail. And he knew how violent his brother Simeon was, and that's why he made that choice. Do I think he changed the brother Simeon? I think he showed some signs that he may have tempered his responses a little bit. We are talking some 20, 30 years later, you know. But his whole descendants were violent. They loved violent. They were so violent that they didn't get land in Israel when it was broken up. They got cities, and they were located within Judah. Judah had more land than Judah needed, and so they took some cities in Judah and gave them to Simeon. Simeon, I think I've got it written down here. Let me look just a minute. He had 13 towns and villages, and all of them was within within Judah. They didn't want Simeon to get big. They didn't want Simeon to have a lot of authority. He was just too evil, or too mean, or too violent. And then we had Levi. Levi was Simeon's little brother, and they thought, well, okay, we'll separate them. Levi was granted 48 cities, and his cities were dispersed all through Israel. They weren't concentrated like Simeon's were, where he could be kept under control easier. Levi eventually got the curse removed from his family, and that happened at Mount Sinai. You can read about that in Exodus 32, verses 25 through 29, or 39, excuse me, checking my notes. And they effectively reversed their curse because they rose. Moses said, "Who is on the Lord's side?" And the Levites came right away to him and followed his instructions. And so they were rewarded. The Lord said, "You don't need land because you are going to be mine. You're going to be mine." When Moses was blessing the tribes, that's at the end of Moses' life, he blessed all the tribes but Simeon and left Simeon out. So that tells you even then, Moses knew what they were, how they were, what they were about. Then in Genesis 49, 7, Jacob continues. He says, "Cursed be their anger, for it's fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel." So it's the attitude. And the deed was horrible that they did. Deeds were horrible that they did, but the attitude that caused it, the unstableness of it, the meanness of spirit and meanness of heart was even worse. You remember, anger's a bad thing. You let it get away from you and it causes all kinds of things to happen that shouldn't. Remember Moses. Moses got angry and struck the rock, and what happened? He never got to go into the promised land. God can love you very much. You can do things and then ask for forgiveness, and God can forgive you, but you still have to suffer the consequences of what your anger caused you to do. If you haul off and hit a wall with your hand and you break your fingers, you can be sorry that you got angry, but your fingers are still broke. You have to watch out for that. So these two tribes, Simeon and Levi, they were given cities, not nations, not lands. Later, Levi's blessed, but Simeon never got better. He had a hard time all his time. Okay, then we're changing gears. Now Jacob's going to be happy for a little while when he talks about Judah. This is going to be a shock to all listening, and it's going to show. And the reason it's going to be a shock. Remember the blessing of the firstborn. Remember the third part. Their tribe is going to be the descendant from which Jesus comes from. Okay, we already know that the firstborn is the right of the firstborn was given to Joseph. And then Joseph wasn't given any land mass. His two portions, one went to Ephraim and one went to Manasseh. He retained the control as the leader of the clan, leader of the families, the one that took care of everybody until his death. Then Ephraim was going to be the leader okay? The one who is the wise one, the one that makes decisions for the clans. He is holding the first and second part. He has one part, his brother has the other, but he has the authority as the wise leader of the tribe when Joseph expires. And they call it the house of Joseph. But Judah, we still have that third part left, that the Hebrew, right of the firstborn, that the Messiah was coming from his lineage. So listen to this surprising thing that happens here. Jacob is continuing. Judah, you are he whom your brothers shall praise. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's children shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He bows down, he lies down as a lion, and as a lion, who shall rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh comes. And to him shall be the obedience of all the people, binding his donkey to a vine and his donkey's coat to the choice vine. He washed his garments in white and his clothes in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, his teeth are whiter than milk. Oh, what a neat thing he's telling Judah. He's telling Judah, your brothers shall honor you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. You're going to be triumphant. You're going to be successful in battles. You're going to be someone that your father's children shall bow down to you. Do you remember how the brothers accepted before when Joseph told them the dream that they were going to bow to him? They scoffed it. They mocked it. They hated Joseph for that dream, but the dream came true. And now their dad is saying the exact same thing to them about Judah. He doesn't mean his son Judah. He means the descendants of Judah. Who are the descendants of Judah? David, Solomon, all those kings are coming from Judah's line. So Judah is a lion's whelp. In our culture, when someone says just a whelp, we think of a young lion, like maybe not even out old enough to hunt when we say whelp. But what the Bible says when they say a whelp, they're talking about a young lion in his prime. And it says, from the prey you have gone up. In other words, he's been victorious. And he bows down and he lies down as a lion. And as a lion, king of all animals, king of the earth. That's what they're talking about. And they're making reference to the Messiah now as coming from Judah's line. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh. That's the Messiah comes. Okay, and if you will remember, we've talked about the word Shiloh before. Shiloh is a place, but it's also a name for the Messiah. And in this passage, everybody I can read or listen to agree that Shiloh stands for Messiah in this instance. So Judah, the tribe of Judah, and the kings that spring forth from him will reign until Shiloh comes. Do you remember at Christmas, at the Nativity, what did the angels tell the shepherds? The Prince of Peace. Peace has come. Remember? All right. Right about that time, Rome had taken over Israel, and their kings had been displaced, and the synagogue, the Sanhedrin was running everything, and the Sanhedrin had ultimate power for the Israelis, or for the Hebrew people, and Rome took that away in 9 AD. And I think I've got that date right, 9 AD. And that if you correlate the way the calendars run, that's also about the time that Jesus was 12 years old and showed up in the temple to teach in the temple. God misses nothing, does he? He misses nothing. When it's talking about binding his donkey to the vine, vines grow thick and so stout that you could tether your donkey to them. They're talking about millennium, when things are really choice, when it's affluent, when it is overflowing with abundance and with riches. And they're talking about the health and affluence that's going to really grace the kings springing from the tribe of Judah. Do you remember Saul? Saul was never God's pick to be a king, but the people insisted. God said, well, Solomon or Samuel, you don't have to worry about them. They're not turning away from you, they're turning away from me. So he allowed them to have King Saul. But King Saul himself said, me? Make me a king? But I'm of the tribe of Benjamin. He said that because he knew he wasn't supposed to have the kingship. The kingship had to come from the tribe of Judah. Okay. This change in the firstborn, we now have the tribe of Ephraim is going to be the head of the tribes. He is the elder, holding the position of the firstborn. He is supposed to be the speaker for the tribes. He is the one that should be consulted when things are going on. He is a big tribe now. He's very affluent, and they are warriors. Okay, Ephraim is. This causes contention, and this causes infighting in later years between Judah's tribe, the tribe of the kings, and Ephraim, who has the other two portions of the birthright. And it plays a big hand on why Israel broke apart. And you had two tribes. You had Judah and Benjamin on one, that's the two, and they called themselves Judah. And then you had the 10 tribes, they called themselves Israel. And if they didn't call themselves Israel, they called themselves Ephraim. Ephraim was the biggest tribe of those 10, and out of him came the leadership for those 10 tribes. That was this right now in 49 that's prophesied. You had two tribes that were having to share leadership for different reasons, and it caused a lot of problems later. If you want to read more about this, they talk a lot about it in Ezekiel. You can look at it there. Okay, so the next one we're going to talk about is Zebulun, and I think Zebulun is going to be the last one we talk about tonight. Zebulun shall dwell by the haven of the sea. He shall become a haven for ships, and his border shall adjoin Sidon. That's verse 13. Zebulun. Now, who did Zebulun belong to? Do you remember? Zebulun was another son of Leah, and Zebulun and Ishkar are usually listed together, fairly close together. And so Zebulun, his land, he had two mountain tops and a valley in between. And from each hill, I don't know if they were mountains or hills, but anyway, from one he could see the Sea of Galilee, and the other he could see the Mediterranean Sea. And it is supposed at that point that that it was the trade that went between, they crossed Zebulun's land, and that he was enriched by the trade that had to go through his land. But if you want to go to Ezekiel and read about the lands being divided in the millennial, Zebulun in the millennial, his land runs down to the Mediterranean, and he has seafront on the Mediterranean during the millennium. So I don't know which way it is. You can check that out in Deuteronomy 33. We don't have any record of him ever having access to water until the reference is about the millennium, that he would have seafront at the millennium. Let's see, what else can I tell you about him? It's a beautiful valley in between those two hilltops. And it says he's going to have beachfront property during the millennium. That's all I can tell you now. There is a map. If you get a map of the Old Testament land masses at that time, it's probably in the back of a lot of you's Bible. You can see that where it's broken up into tribes. Zebulun is very much landlocked, but if he has those two hilltops, he can look over and see both of those water masses. So I don't know which it is. I will talk to you again probably next Sunday night. We'll finish up chapter 49. Thank you.